I'm resident of Cottonwood, Joel Saints, joined with my buddy Gordon Dymowski and my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to
Exactly.
discuss the movie Becket from 1964, starring Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole. Polo Stoppa is in this movie as the Pope. By the way, he is in Once Upon a Time in the West, one of my favorite westerns. So, guys, when did you first see this movie? I know when I first saw it.
I saw it in seventh grade. And, back then, movies in school were not that common, although VHS had finally started to appear. And I think they had the double VHS of Becket. And, um, and it was the sort of thing where the teachers just needed some time off, So that's throwing, 2.5 hour movie, great. It'll take care of them for a week. And we learned about the Battle of Hastings. They kind of wedged that in because this is all fallout from the Battle of Hastings, with the Normans defeating the Saxons and coming into to England to rule, and bringing their forks with them. And so we got some education on that. We learned about the Bayeux Tapestry and so on. And I think at that time, that's kind of the time in education when they start to hardcore. We're developing abstract thinking skills, and so they know that our capacity to do naughty things has gone beyond short sheeting a bed, and that they can start to talk to us about genuine moral issues, about taking a stand for right and wrong and all of that. And so this is one of those ideal movies to bring that discussion in. At the time, it was 1984, probably. So the movie was only 30 years old, so that's, what's 30 years? It would be 1994. So, around the time that I guess the Phantom and the Shadow and things like that were coming out. So that kind of lets you know what the relative distance in time was. And I still consider those, as weird as it sounds, to be vaguely contemporary. I was an adult when those came out. So in other words, it's a lot like The Phantom. And they cut out Treat Williams as the villain, truly behind Henry's spending habits. Now, Jewel, I'm sure you enjoyed this movie because, of course, it is a prequel essentially to Lion in Winter. You're aware of that, right? It's the same Henry. It's
Yeah,
the same Henry, the same actor.
yeah, I got that in the movie. Actually, I'd never seen this movie until you guys said about it. I'd seen Lion in Winter. I'd never seen Becket until 2 days ago,
Uh-huh.
and I like how they shot this movie, and
Beautiful film, very lavish.
right, I really love how they shot it, and the score is really well done too. The acting is just phenomenal. Richard Burton is always fun to watch, no matter what he's in. And Peter O'Toole, he is just the master of playing old time kings, especially Henry. I love the only reason I enjoyed Troy was because of Peter O'Toole, because
Okay.
he was in the movie Troy that had Brad Pitt in it. Um, really, really great performance all around by the entire cast. You do have the princess slash queen who's going to be played by a different actress in Lion in Winter, and the sons. He goes, my son John, who he goes to kick, which that's how he pretty much treats John. Now, here's the thing with Lion in Winter, he treats John more like a baby in the next in Lion in Winter. With this, he's more rough around the edges with him until he realizes his son betrayed him in Lion in Winter. With this, you learn about the friendship he has with a Saxon named Becket, who's played by Richard Burton, who's the top billing of this movie. He's your star. And I really enjoyed how they opened this because the opening very much reminded me of a very well known movie. Um, oh God, I'm gonna blank on it. Citizen Kane, where they start with someone's death, and they're asked. But with this, instead of asking a bunch of questions, we actually do get a proper context of a great long flashback, and the flashback isn't pointless at all. It's really well done. Peter O'Toole's eyes really tell an amazing story through, like when he's talking to Beckett's tomb. Peter O'Toole was always great at telling a story, not just with his voice, but with his eyes. I really enjoyed the movie throughout. When I said about the length of this movie, I was just shocked because I had not seen a movie with intermission in such a long time. It's been a while since I've seen a movie with intermission.
Well, in certain video releases, they just removed that completely. So
I know that's the thing. It's like you don't see intermission too much anymore. So I guess I should have expected it with this. I just wasn't. But I didn't mind the length of the movie, mind you. I just enjoy it from start to finish. And I really love Richard Burton telling Peter O'Toole's character, don't do this. Don't make me the Archbishop. No, don't.
He warns him.
Yeah, he's like, don't do this. And I think the scene is just so much more powerful when you realize when you know the outcome, but you're wondering how did it come to that, and then you see how it came to that. Go ahead, Gordon. Sorry.
Well, I was just listening, so you two carry on.
I'm fascinated.
I'm fascinated too, right in the arm.
As sort of both people have had sort of brushes with Catholicism. On a scale of 1 to 10, how Catholic is this movie?
Well, I think given where the church was at that particular time, I would say it's very much a 9 out of 10 in Catholicism, because in that period, that kind of in the 11th, 12th century, the Catholic Church was basically like a second form of government. Countries as we knew them weren't really existing. They were more just kind of like you had like a bunch of like little villages, and okay, we agree that you go past that tree and you're out of here. So the church most of the monks knew how to read and write, so they were the document keepers. The church had much more of a unifying role. I mean, the church was essentially a second empire.
Yes.
So I would say that it's Catholic in that sense. I'll be honest, I had not seen Becket until this past weekend.
How did it age for you?
I think it aged well, because I think part of it is I think a lot of movies at that time, when you're doing those big kind of epics, you needed to do it. Like, it was so refreshing to see something that had like used actual castles and sets and not CGI and green screen.
Yeah.
Because my introduction to the whole issue of Thomas Becket actually wasn't this film in high school. It was Murder in the Cathedral by T.S. Eliot. And that reminds me of a quote from that Groucho Marx once wrote in a letter to T.S. Eliot, which is, have you ever noticed that Peter O'Toole is a double phallic name?
Sure. Well, you know what his middle name is? It's Seamus, which is spelled just a little bit off, almost making it a triple.
Mm-hmm.
A triple gamer.
But I think what's interesting too, at least my read of the film, is that whole introductory scene where it's leading up to the sequence that leads up to, O'Toole saying, hey, look, telling him, oh, I want to make you chancellor, make you archbishop, and Burton is saying, no, no, no. You never know what exactly Burton's Becket is thinking, because it's established very clear. He knows how to play the political game. He knows how to maneuver. He keeps his cards very close to the chest. So you're never quite sure. I think the last hour you kind of get the sense that, yeah, he is starting to develop at least a sense of, if not spirituality, more religiosity. Like he's starting to believe the tenets of the church, and he's willing to adopt those beliefs. But even still, you're never quite sure if he's doing that. Because let's face it, O'Toole's Henry II was a total dick to him. I mean, especially the scene where O'Toole is, it's the redhead in the castle where Burton is, and she kind of have an onagon. It's like a very casual thing in modern parlance. And Henry comes and says, "Oh, okay, well, she's mine, favor for favor." And then she later kills herself. I think there's a real sense that you get a sense that, one, this Henry was never Becket's friend. He was too involved in being the king. He's a dick to his wife. He's a dick to his kids. And I know that historically, Henry II did essentially surrender to monks who whipped him. And hey, you know what? If that's your fetish, that's your fetish. I'm not here to judge. I'm not kink shaming anybody, but you do get the sense like his Henry II deserved it.
Oh yeah. And that shows, I think because he has been so rotten up to that point, it really sets that up as a major moment. I think if he had been a nicer guy, okay, well, who cares? But he's not. And that's what, for me, really makes that work.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question, because I'm not sure about this. Does him getting whipped prevent him from being excommunicated?
I probably didn't hurt.
It didn't hurt, and excommunication back then, you kind of had to do some really serious stuff. What happened historically was that the 4 guys who killed Becket actually made their way to Rome to try to get a pardon from the Pope. Henry had gotten whipped, and he did his penance. So the Pope said, okay, fine, we're cool. When the 4 guys came, the Pope's like, nope, I'm sending you to Holy Lands for 14 years. And this was pre-Crusades. So this was basically, the Pope was basically saying, go die out there. I don't want to deal with you.
Yeah. And die they most likely did.
Sure.
Yeah, the Crusade, pre-Crusades. Jesus. Really, really good film. Just overall, I really enjoyed the acting. Obviously, Richard Burton, Peter O'Toole, great chemistry. I mean, Peter O'Toole always had great chemistry with his co-star, either the star or the co-star.
I think it. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
The actress's name I forgot for Lion in Winter was Katharine Hepburn. She plays the Queen in Lion in Winter. But for Becket, the woman is still a princess at this point. So she's queen as she addresses herself. And I love how Henry, he can not only not stand his wife, which he can't stand his mother.
The milkman has arrived early. I'll be back in a moment.
Yeah, and remember, and I can say this now that Patrick's off screen. Patrick's actually working on a new play called The Milkman Cometh. So, when he releases it in a few months, just act surprised.
Very, very nice. Very.
Yeah, but I'm sure it also helped that like both Burton and O'Toole were great drinkers and rabble rousers. So I could just imagine, and this came a year after Cleopatra, when Burton was had an affair and later married Elizabeth Taylor. So I'm sure Peter O'Toole's drunk and doing wild stuff, and Burton is just knocking him back and like, oh God, I wish that Taylor woman would get off my case. But I do think, yeah, it has a really nice, and I think, Patrick had asked whether I think it aged well. I think it did age very well, because I think right now, especially now, most movies, you can tell that most movies are written to a specific formula. there's a book out, and I forget the author, but it's called Save the Cat. It's one of these. Here's how you write a screenplay. And you do this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. It's nice that this movie doesn't feel like that. That there's an actual story and a flow. And I honestly it didn't seem that long to me at all. I mean, I paused at the intermission, but I had to go to the bathroom at that point. But I think it was a really well-written, well-directed film. I mean, I don't know where they shot it, but they got some really good shots at the beach and the castle where they filmed at. Just, it's nice to see non-CGI settings.
Never think we'll see something like that again, where it's just, instead of we get CGI, we get actual location.
I think what we'll probably end up seeing more likely is actual locations, but combined with green screen.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
So
like you may get, like I know there have been a lot of films shot in, say, Romania.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of castles and a lot of industrial areas there, but it's, in order to make it look otherwise, you have to use a lot of CGI and green screen. It's kind of like it's one of the reasons why like Georgia is such a has seen a lot of increased film activity, because you've got, you drive certain places, you get woods, you get urban, you get suburban. You've got several studios there. In fact, here in Chicago, there are a couple of projects. I know there's, on the south side, there's a complex where it's where they film all the Dick Wolf stuff. Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med. There's also, I know there are plans to build another one I think it's on the southeast, so like closer to Indiana, within the next few years. But I like the fact that it takes advantage of existing structures. So I do think at some point we will. I think the hard part too is that so many movies, and this is where I'm going to go off on a rant, folks, so bear with me. Because you don't have low to mid budget movies anymore.
yeah.
Like even indie movies are like 20, 30 million, because you spend a lot to make a lot. I think it's one of the reasons why, I mean, it's one of the reasons why the white writers and actors are striking, is that you're seeing that it's this mentality of you got to go bigger, 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 bigger. But in order to go big, you have to cut the number of screenwriters. You have to cut, you have to make it harder for, I mean, visual effects technicians are close to going on strike, because they're being asked to do, okay, we want these gorgeous shots. Okay, well, we can do them in like a year and at 40 hours a week. No, we need them in 6 weeks, and we need you to do work 80 and 90. And then as they're working on them, they're being told to change it. So, I mean, if you want a good example of overwork, if you go to YouTube and look up the Flash cameos, where it's the big sequence where they throw in various superheroes, that CGI is bad.
Yeah.
It's like, I normally wouldn't encourage you to do it because I feel like I'd be punishing you, but yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's like, the closest I can come to it, have you ever seen the remake of The Thing that came out in 2010?
Yes. Well, see, here's the thing, though. That wasn't a remake.
Well, the prequel, the movie that supposedly happened before the 1980 movie.
Yeah, I saw it.
What did you think? And be honest.
Horrible effects. Horrible. Just, the CGI was awful. And here's the thing, too. You know John Carpenter's thing, which we both do up and down. You know it was a Belgium team. And out of all, most of them were like talking English. And it's like the two people who make it out, okay, they're Belgian. But it's like forget that, the CGI just sucks. They should use practical effects.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. That's what makes the first, and don't worry, people, we will talk about Becket, but that's what makes the first movie so great. I mean, if I see, there are three names that on a horror sci-fi movie, I know I'm in for a great a great time. Tom Savini, Rick Baker, Rob Bottin. And Rob Bottin did because with the Thing, they have weight and they're solid. Like the defibrillator scene, that still surprises me, and I've seen it a dozen times. I know that it's like clear, boom, clear, boom, clear, crunch.
Yeah. Even the old school black and white Thing has great practical effects, like great. But again, that's pre-CGI. That's the thing. Like, I have more of an appreciation for the older films because when you look at certain CGI, like here's a movie. I'll give a movie that has great CGI, and the CGI has aged well. Look at Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
That CGI is great, and looks better today than what a lot of what we get today.
Yeah, because CGI is so overused, and like with Becket, I mean the nice thing is if you did Becket in CGI, and my theory is that your brain just goes, oh, I know that's fake. Like as soon as Patrick comes back to the podcast and we see his little screen, I bet you odds he's going to use a CGI generated version of himself. Place your bets, people. Place your bets.
No, I don't need it back.
But yeah, it's and I think too, because you're going bigger, more movies are relying on it as a crutch, when really you can use it to just sweeten. So like there's a movie, and it came out about 10 years ago, and I think it's on Tubi. It's called You Kill Me. It's about Ben Kingsley plays an assassin who is, I think, falls in love with Tia Leone. It's a quirky kind of love story. And there's CGI in that movie. And you know what the CGI is? They filmed it in, I think, like Pittsburgh, like during the summer months. They use CGI to put snow on the ground. Now that's how you use it. You use it to sweeten. You use it as very light. What you don't do is you don't create huge dramatic one of the movies I saw this morning was Ant-Man Quantumania. Now, it's got some great CGI and effects, and it's not a bad movie, but it's just kind of like, focus on the script and let the spectacle follow the script. And I think with Becket, you could probably film, let's say you just found like an old school somewhere. You could film it and maybe you'd have to rejigger some of the scenes to be more modern accommodating. You're doing a postmodern version of the play. It would still work because the writing is there. But I think the fact that the castles have a weight, and you can see as Henry's coming out, all the crowds around him. That, to me, that has a lot more direct impact than, okay, yeah. And work goes into CGI, but it's kind of like because a lot of visual effects artists are usually under the gun and never get the time or the resources to do it right. I think that it kind of suffers.
Here's a movie, well, not movie, but a television show that I feel got effects right so far, and I really love the most recent episode because it's the Strange New Worlds. Just did another Gorn episode where it was a nod to Alien, because it's Star Trek always does nods to Alien, and this was one of the best Alien nods I've seen, and they made the Gorn scary again. I mean, terrifying. That episode scared I'm an adult. That episode scared the shit out of me. And I love what they did. It's like that. Spoiler alert! If you're listening to this, one of the one woman ends up pregnant with
infected.
Infected with Gorn children, and it's then you have there are members who are beamed up into the Gorn ship. It's like, and you saw what one Gorn did on the wrecked ship that they tore apart, where Nurse Chapel was, and it's like, holy Jesus.
And I know there's a bunch of Star Wars fans online are complaining like, oh, but the Gorn don't look like they did in Star Trek, the original series, and why are they xenomorphs now, and blah blah blah. It's like, these are made up aliens. dealing with made up people on a made up show. It's okay. It's just like, I'm going to go off on a little bit more on this tangent. It's like, for years, Doctor Who fans would say like, oh, but he only has 12 regenerations. How do we do this? Or, oh, how are they going to explain this? It's like, the writers will write out of it. It's made up. You can do that. And if you're that hung up on canon, maybe you need to turn off the device, step away from what you're watching, go outside, maybe smell some flowers, take a walk, and maybe get a sense of perspective. And scene.
I get the sense too with like this, they didn't make the Gorn mindless. They're very smart, intelligent creatures, sort of like a John Carpenter's The Thing was. There is obviously an alien, like a xenomorph look to him with the tail more so than anything else. But everything else just looks more natural. And I like how they have to wear these helmets. The one adult was wearing a helmet. I love that because they're in space. He was in space. That was really created by the writers. I felt I liked the episode.
Yeah, I did too. And I think with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, what they're trying to do is kind of use different elements from the original series in a unique way. And I think that you really can't do the Klingons because that's more of an original series. And the Romulans, you're playing in this. I mean, prequels are always tough because there's certain things you can hint at, but certain things you can't bring in too early. But I think bringing in the Gorn is like one. The production team has said, they're just in this show. They're just monsters. They're not really monsters. They're more like the Predator, or they're like xenomorphs. They're intelligent. We just don't understand what their intelligence is. You know what I mean?
No, that's a great, it perfectly put, because they're more like a predator or an alien. They're very smart and they're very calculated, because they sent the Enterprise a communication of the border, like don't cross here. And if you do, basically we're going to attack. And the Captain Pike makes the decision to, okay, we got to do this before they realize what we're doing. And they're so smart, they realized it very quickly what the hell they were doing, which I like.
Yeah, and I think that the show does a really good job of, you may not like every episode, but they're at least willing to, they take a lot of creative chances that they may not be sure will work, but at least they're taking the chances. It's not like, and I know it's popular to harp on Discovery, but it seems like for like every season except the first, it's been the big threat that affects the galaxy, and they got to figure out what it is.
Yeah, I like how Strange New Worlds handled their crossover with Lower Decks. Very, very smart too. The musical was just fun. I'm a sucker for a good musical. The Phantom of the Opera is my favorite. Let's see if Patrick's ready to come back here. Oh God! But yeah, it's.
Yeah, I can't wait until Patrick watches this, because he's going to be like, okay, I went off and, oh, they're talking about Star Trek. I wanted to talk about Star Trek. It's we love Patrick. We honestly do love Patrick.
What's been the most shocking thing to you so far about season 2, Gordon?
I think the shocking thing to me about season 2, was that when Pike and Ortegas and Uhura were arguing with their stylist about their haircuts. That was the thing that surprised me the most.
Well, with Ortegas, it's like she said, here's an electric clippers. You try to cut my hair, I'll try to get away. So full disclosure, because, normally I don't talk about these things, but it's publicity. I am, in just a few days, going to Mad Monster convention in North Carolina, in Concord, North Carolina, and I will be there with Catherine Lee Scott. And
Awesome.
I'm going to be at her table with hardcover copies of Daybook Unbound, which finally arrived. And so a lot of things are 11th hour. I just got new tires put on the truck because I'll be picking her up at the airport. And I take being responsible for, a legend kind of seriously. This is like my last chance to get the car detailed. So that's also going on right now. As it turns out, it was not the milkman. And there were a lot of pieces of technical equipment that weren't there, which are now. So that's where I was. And go to Mad Monster Con.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sorry I had to whip me. So anyway, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? So we're talking about Ortega's haircut.
Right, and as it relates to Becket, and there's a whole separate conversation. Jewel and I were talking about how the themes of Becket resonated within Star Trek, and my advice is don't even bother watching this podcast to catch up, because I think it gets very esoteric. It gets into the clouds. I mean, Jewel was talking about how it relates to Kierkegaard's thought, and I thought, okay, what position on the Bears would the Kierkegaard be? It was just out there.
The Gomorrian Kierkegaard.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about the Gorn in the most recent episode?
I was charmed. I thought they were terrifying.
Yes, absolutely.
I've got a lot I can say about all of that. It was a really scary episode. And I hope that it bodes well. I know it's very fanish of me. I hope it bodes well for Spock and Christine. I had not seen the end of the episode where he becomes human. And so I hadn't really seen the extent of sort of how he was treating her in that episode. So without that, when I got to Subspace Rhapsody, I thought, what a horrible person. Nurse Chapel's being terrible to him. She's gloating. It's like she dated me. And
well, if I may spoil it for you, because I've seen all the episodes.
Yeah.
With the end of at the end of the human episode, Chapel realizes that it's the logical, non-emotional part of Spock that kind of appeals to her. Then there was the episode after that was the crossover with Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And Boimler from the future kind of lets slip that Spock is not going to change, because he sees Spock trying to be more human, and he's freaked out. Like Spock is doing like the awkward smile.
Yeah, I remember.
And
that.
so
I wondered what that was about.
Yeah, he accidentally lets slip to Chapel and something about Spock, and she realizes that it's never going to happen. So the whole "I'm ready," she's being kind of vindictive, but she's also realizing that, like, hey, look, I got to get out of this. It's that false confidence of, oh, I don't need him. I can do this stuff alone. I often do. Hey, I mean, I even go on Skype and record and pretend I'm doing a podcast with you and Jewel. You can find it on my YouTube channel.
Oh, Lord, on your OnlyFans channel is more like it. So, all right. Well, there we go. These are things I did not know about Spock.
Mm-hmm.
We were also talking about that how smart they have made the Gorn sort of like a predator / alien nod, especially with the tail. I really like how they put the space mask on the Gorn, because again the ship was exposed to outer space. Really, really great writing that is going on with Strange New Worlds.
I agree.
But let's get back to Becket. What do you guys give this movie? 1 out of 10.
This is a great movie. I mean, I give it a 10.
I give it a 10 too.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that I like the hunting scene the most because it's just that sort of sets up prior to the favor for it's what sets up the favor for the favor. Um, there's this Saxon woman, the Saxon family, and their son is the one guy's son is being hunted by the king, and the daughter is a very pretty girl, and the king wants her cleaned up, and then that's when Becket says, "Oh, I take her as mine." But when the king leaves, he tells the father, "They'll never come for her. I'll see to it." And he hands him the money anyway.
What?
And
No, keep going, Jewel, and then I have a question about that character.
and then when they get back to the castle, that's when O'Toole's Henry says, "Oh, Becket? Did you forget?" And he brings in the girl, and this it's just like this is right before he finds that woman dead in his bed, which is just all time sad. But go ahead.
Who is that actress? Or what was the name of the character? Because
the red-haired woman who kills herself is Gwendolyn, and her name is Sian Phillips.
That's Sian Phillips. Okay. So now, Joel, did you ever see Clash of the Titans?
Many, many, many years ago.
The real one. You know, I believe that's Hera. And she is Livia. She was Peter O'Toole's wife. And she is Livia in what I feel is the greatest television series ever made, I, Claudius, which is a miniseries from England. And is astounding. My God, is it great? It literally has everything.
Like Patrick Stewart in a great curly hair wig.
John Rhys
Davies, the least of it.
Who's not being racist.
John Hurt as Caligula, Brian Blessed as Augustus, Derek Jacobi as Claudius. I mean, it's just there.
It manages to be history, deep dish history, very intricate, and yet it is like the soapiest soap opera, most entertaining, cheap bawdy spectacle possible, and it's the spectacle about the Roman Empire that never has a crowd scene, or barely has a crowd scene. I think there's like a couple of scenes in the market. It's all about the family, about stuff that's going on in there.
Yeah, and it's based on a 1930 novel, which was based on, I think it's called The Lives of the 12 Caesars by Suetonius.
By Suetonius, yeah.
And Suetonius was like, he was dishy.
He's the National Enquirer of ancient Rome.
Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of learning Latin in high school is you get to translate that.
Oh, very good. Very good. Did you get to do Satyricon?
Pieces of it. We didn't do all of it.
That's another good one. Yeah, Jewel, this is something I'm telling you. If you get through the first couple of episodes, which is a lot, it's like the Bible. It's a lot of begats. It's keeping track of who's married to whom, doing what to whom, and so on and so forth. If you get through that, the rest of it flies by. And it's you'd be amazed at how many actors are in it. Voltan the Hawkman, without a beard, is Augustus, has a major part in it. It's incredible. It's really good.
Here's a question for you guys. Do you ever think that we'll get a movie about, well, it's initially a video game, but a movie about Zelda?
Well, we have gone to a loftier topic with Zelda, so I'm glad the conversation's finally elevated beyond the Roman Empire. I think the big question, Jewel, and you might know this, is why has there not been something with Zelda? Why has that property sort of not been filmed?
Well, keep in mind too, prior video games were sort of well prior. Like their video games were very much hit and miss. Some were
Yes.
hits, some were not. Hits were Mortal Kombat, Silent Hill. Original misses were Super Mario Brothers, which was
You're leaving
Nintendo.
out Pitfall. Now that's a video game. Pitfall for the 2600.
And there were successes like Tomb Raider, but Nintendo's first attempt at a movie was Super Mario Brothers, and it didn't do well because it was just poorly received by the audience until they actually did do a proper Super Mario Brothers movie very recently.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have the success of Sonic. So I think now what you're about to see instead of a bunch of superhero movies is more video game movies. Gran Turismo is out, by the way. That's another video game movie.
I have a friend in that first Super Mario Brothers movie.
Really?
And I'll stand by. Yeah, Mojo Nixon.
You know Mojo Nixon?
I have a copy, and Wallace has posted this before, a picture of it. I have a copy of the script to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which I got about 6 months before the movie was released, autographed by Mojo Nixon, that says, "Worf is a panty waste." Mojo Nixon.
And remember, music store owners, everyone, if you don't have Mojo Nixon, your playlist needs some fixing.
That's true. Now, Jewel, do you know Mojo Nixon? You know who we're talking about?
No.
He did a number of amazing songs. He's sort of rockabilly type. Elvis Is Everywhere is maybe his greatest, but he has a lot of really good ones.
Earlier this year, and you may have to rent it from Amazon, there's a documentary called The Mojo Manifesto. Go see that.
I don't know anything about that.
No, I've seen it. It's great. It is a biography of Mojo Nixon.
Yeah, Mojo San Diego guy. And so he was friends with Todd Loren, who's the publisher of Revolutionary Comics. And the only authorized biography we did was Mojo Nixon.
I think you'll see now more video games get made into movies, and probably Zelda won't be too far away. Now,
Jewel,
again,
what's your top 10 list of movies you want to see? From
number
video?
one, Zelda, because I'm a huge Zelda mark. I loved Link. Very, very cool Zelda. Zelda was the first Nintendo game I ever played.
Okay.
My second favorite Nintendo game was Breath of Fire, but that's neither here nor there. But Zelda was always it. Link was just the man, and so that's something I definitely want to see. There's supposed to be another Silent Hill movie by the guy who made the first one. That I'm excited about. I don't know if I want to see any more attempts at Resident Evil right now. They've missed too many times on it. I don't want to see it.
What for you is the most successful translation of a video game into a movie?
Silent Hill, so far. Like if you're talking now, to be clear, if you're defining success by how accurate they got the game itself, like from the game to the movie, it works because they do take a bit of Harry Vincent and James Sunderland and sort of mix it together, but they also add this woman who's the mother, her own story to this. So it's not exactly the story you get from the first and second game, which I don't mind. Now, Silent Hill Revelations, yeah, don't see that piece of shit. Don't. The first Silent Hill movie, see.
Do you have any other properties you'd like to see translated?
Most the one got let me see, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Mega Man.
Pardon?
Mega Man.
I'm sensing a real Nintendo thing here. Is that the case?
I grew up more of a Nintendo guy than I did Sega Genesis or anything else. So
sure. Now, do you like video games for men? I'm kidding. I do that to a friend of mine. Now, did you mention Red Dead Redemption?
See, here's the thing: Red Dead Redemption 2, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 are so good, and
Yeah.
they're basically, when you play them, they're sort of like, it's the gameplay is so good, but it sort of plays out like a movie already. I
Okay.
don't think you could make a movie that would top the game,
Okay.
and there would be way too much pressure to. And here's the thing too: if Rockstar's involved in it, my fear, because here's the thing: if you notice with Rockstar, everything is Grand Theft Auto until they finally get off their ass and do something with Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption 2 took a long time to come out because they were so busy with Grand Theft Auto. Look what's going on now with Rockstar. It's the next Grand Theft Auto. The most thing that is getting kicked around with Red Dead Redemption is a remaster or remake of Red Dead Redemption 1. And I don't think we'll get that anytime soon.
Interesting. Now, Gordon, I don't know if you play video games or not, or anything like that. Is there a video game title you would like to see?
Not particularly. I
Okay.
play video games off and on, but I'm not really like I need to see this on film.
What about Missile Command? Asteroids.
Okay, Qbert.
Boot Hill. Qbert would be great.
Defender.
I don't even know her. Now, Joel, let me ask you this. How about Diablo as a movie? They already have the Sandwich and Smokey and the Bandit.
Again, it all depends on who you get to do it. I think that's the thing too. You when you do a video game movie, you sort of have to strike while the iron is hot.
Trauma.
And right now, the iron for video game movies is very hot.
Yeah. Trauma.
What's that?
Get Trauma. The people who made Toxic Avenger. Get them to make the lavish spectacle that Diablo deserves. I'm kidding. That would be a disaster.
You know what would be something I don't know if they'll ever do it, but Star Fox.
Star Fox. Okay, why Star Fox?
Because it was so much fun to play. It was like playing as a fox that flew a jet in outer space was just fun.
I agree. I never did it, but it sounds like fun.
Ironically, Star Fox was the name of my T-Rex cover band.
I would definitely have everything to do with that. Yeah. And my band was Infinite Regression.
Now, Patrick,
our top seller is Hassline Curves.
Is there a video game you'd like to see made into a movie?
Me?
Yes, you.
Video game I'd like to see made into a movie. That I think this really deserves to be a movie, or this needs to be a movie. Well, the line between what a video game is and what a movie is has changed so much since I was, a youth. That I think I think we're almost already there.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but I think we have come so far in that there's not a lot of, maybe get around to those Resident Evil those Resident Evil games, make a movie out of those. I think something like Grand Theft Auto. I think if you look at the really big landmark franchise, I think Heavy Rain would be good. I think as a silent film made by somebody like Stephen Chow, as a filmmaker who can make very beautiful and epic movies, I think Journey is something I would love to see as a film. If you haven't played that game, it's a PlayStation game. It's stunning. It's really beautiful. You can play the whole thing in 2 hours, and it's cinematic as hell. And it has, I think, one of the most unforgettable musical scores of any game. And they didn't sequelize it because you die at the end and go to the afterlife, and that's part of the journey. Yeah.
One more.
Sure.
Legacy of Kain.
Now, what is that?
You've never played Legacy?
No, I haven't.
Legacy of Kain is about this guy who gets betrayed and he gets turned into a vampire.
Okay.
And you play as, his name is Kain, and you play as him, and you go through the game trying to avenge what happened to you, or get revenge for what happened to you. The sequel, Soul Reaver, is really good. You play as Raziel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those I would love to see.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun. We've got off topic for Becket. What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie?
The beach scene, the conversation with them on the beach, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoy the one that led up to the fact that when he becomes the Archbishop, the conversation in France, where Becket is begging him, like, don't do this, no, and he does warn him. You're right, and it brings every realization home right then and there of what's to come, but how is it going to happen? And then I love how when you come back, you hear the lashing happen, then you see it.
Yeah.
You hear it first, then you see it. Very, very, very great job by the director and the cinematographer and the sound effect people, how they did that.
It's a wonderful piece of editing. I mean, it just is absolutely top flight filmmaking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You guys ever see The Passion of the Christ?
I never did.
Nope.
I never did. It was so political when it came out, and there was so much. There was so much kind of almost kind of a violent fervor because it was shortly after 9/11, and that was going on at the time, that to see the movie was a political act, and to choose not to see the movie at the time was a political act. And I think it's probably time for me to watch it. I've heard a lot of amazing things about it. Joel, what did you think of it?
Mel Gibson did a hell of a job as a director and really did a smut. He got this in Aramaic, and
yes,
I went to theater to actually see this, and it was really just a beautifully shot film, and how they were able to just shoot and properly edit. Now, there are some things that happen behind the scenes. For example, the guy who played Jesus, Jim Caviezel, got hit by lightning during the crucifixion scene. He actually got hit by the whip by accident. Just some crazy stuff when you hear that. But overall, the movie's fantastic. It leaves you in tears by the end and makes you think what Jesus Christ sacrificed for our sins.
Now, do you feel that they made a lot about the gore in the movie? Was the gore necessary? Did it help the film?
I think so. Keep in mind, this is not the first crucifixion movie with gore. Now, it has more gore than most. It's 10 times what King of Kings was. King of Kings has some.
Well, it's a different era too. I mean,
right.
Yeah,
that's sort of where it's, again, if you can stomach the blood, you'll make it through this movie.
the movie, I think, is probably maybe the fairest comparison at the time as a movie that was made because it was the other Jesus movie at the time. I think there are probably two films to compare it to. One is The Book of John, which I saw in the theaters with my friend Randall, who was becoming a Methodist minister. He's a big movie fan. We just saw it because it's kind of part of his job. And I think that was like 4 hours. I didn't have narcolepsy at the time, but I may have developed it during the movie as a response. There was a lot of it. But I mean, for what it did, it wasn't bad. Now, I think a film that would be worth comparing it to and looking at is the Martin Scorsese movie, The Last Temptation of Christ, which was very controversial when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Are you, Joel? Are you familiar with that movie?
I've seen it, but not in a long time.
It's how is it? I have never seen it.
It is controversial, but it's good.
I've seen Last Temptation of Christ, and it's thought provoking because the controversy was about a single scene where Christ is being tempted, and so he has basically he sees how his life could be, but
it's the holodeck.
Yeah, I mean leading up to it, it's about a man who is leading and struggling with his spirituality. I've never seen The Passion of Christ, and I quite honestly, as someone who was an altar boy who would have to serve Station of the Cross every Good Friday every year, where you literally go around the church, were like, I think it's the 12 stations where it literally starts with like, okay, Jesus going into town, then Jesus gets whipped, and up until he's buried. And you have to go around, and there's like little prayers and that. I really did not want to relive that on a movie screen, and it's not a, for me, it was just, I was so familiar with that story. Yeah. And I also knew historically that crucifixion was used as a method of torture for a lot of criminals, that what was done to him, it's not excusing it. It's just not something I would necessarily want to go see. I would rather see a very schlocky, really bad, gory horror movie than I would The Passion of Christ. Because at least a horror movie, there's no sense of, we're doing this because we're better Christians than you. And that's the vibe I got from that movie.
Interesting. Yeah, it was a very charged time. I remember I was in a role-playing game group, and I was the sole secular person in it, and several of the players had been very they were new to Christianity at that phase of their lives. It was this very kind of Southern phenomenon. It may be a phenomenon everywhere, where they're guys, they're the first marriage, they get divorced, and they meet a woman, and she puts a lot of pressure on them to engage in worship, and so they do, and they become more fervent than their wives, and so there was one guy in particular who was kind of violent in his advocacy for the movie. I remember there's a funny article that came out in the newspaper, I thought it was funny, about a guy who was dressed up like the devil to see the movie, and he was later I realized, oh my God, it was a horrible physical assault, but he was kicked in the groin, which I was not happy about. But it is a, if you remove any humanity from it, it's a wacky image. And I just sort of forwarded this to our email group and saying, this is going a bit far. And this one guy said, no, actions have consequences. Sometimes the consequences of free speech in a free society is being kicked in the balls. And I just thought, oh God, I got to get out of this. And I basically did. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what I mean by the movie having a very kind of political life that was outside the film. But that era is over in its own way, and I think this is the first time I've heard the movie mentioned in a long time. But I tell you, even serious film people I knew, they said one of two things. They either said it was like a horror movie and it was too violent, or they said it's a really good movie. I kind of wonder if 9/11 had not happened and we didn't have sort of this wave of neocon kind of religiousness that George W. Bush kind of brought into things. If the movie would have been received, I think the way Gibson intended it to be received, and I don't know. I would like to think so.
Mm-hmm.
There was conversations about that. I'm trying to think where he was talking, not Gibson, but Chris Rock was talking about a movie he had done that I had seen called Dogma, I think, or something
Dogma.
different.
Yeah, Dogma. That was a very controversial movie.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was, and it's a movie I enjoy for just entertainment. But I thought, man, people hate that movie. It's entertaining.
Well, there was
It's
a real push to hate the movie, and there was some controversy surrounding it, but it died down very quickly.
Mhm.
I think I no longer hear anyone talk about the movie, much less speak badly about it.
Yeah, and most of the people I think who hated the movie didn't bother seeing it because now that is a very Catholic movie.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. It definitely is. And sometimes these movies are misunderstood. I know Last Temptation of Christ was apparently very misunderstood. It was an extremely Catholic movie, and was not appreciated as such. By the overall powers that are. And the Catholic Church is real weird about art because sometimes they are completely hip about things that are pretty vivid. The Exorcist, stuff like that. Was made in full cooperation with the Catholic Church, and then other times they get very cranky, and it but it really gets fueled by the Protestants, who seem to certain groups of them seem to really have an axe to grind about a lot. What I feel like, because back in the 50s and the 60s, it was the Catholic Legion of Decency out of Boston that was the big enemy of, almost anything fun that was going to come out. But, we haven't heard from them I haven't heard from them in forever. They stopped sending me those letters. And so, we have a real complex cultural relationship with that. However, the, kind of hardcore, this really gets into some weird history, but sort of half of American Protestantism is at a kind of war with the other half of American Protestantism. And this goes back a long time. It goes back to something called the Stone Campbell movement, which was an attempt to unify all of this stuff. And instead, it created two groups. One group that is kind of the Methodist, Episcopalians, and Presbyterians, I believe, and they are much more invested in the gospel. And then you have kind of the other group, which would be Baptist, Pentecostals, and so on. And sure, they're fans of the Gospels. They take Paul much more seriously, and that's where Paul has a lot to say about a lot, and he covers a lot of stuff that Jesus did not cover. And so, I investigated all of this because I kept wondering about these Trump supporters running around claiming to be Christian and yet not necessarily being big into the forgiveness thing and the tolerance thing and the social justice thing, all the stuff that, Jesus spent his life advocating. And when I did the research, I realized that a lot of their stuff was coming from Paul. And that's where you have this split. And in a movie like Last Temptation of Christ, you very much get this weird unification. So that's a history lesson. Was that interesting? Did that shed any light on anything? I don't know.
It was very interesting. Is there anything you guys want to add about Becket before?
That love is exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you. The Becket boat. soon we'll be making another run.
Gordon.
Beckett's on Tubi, and I would encourage everyone to see it. It's a very thought-provoking film. It's also, yes, it's 2.5 hours long, but you know what? There's a pause button for a reason.
You sit through, I mean, not anyone here, but I mean, a person sits through these Marvel movies that are far longer. I mean, my God. You know, what was that thing? It just started with an I. It was the one with all the characters nobody cares about. What was it?
Oh, Infinity War?
No, it was recent. It was the one where it's not Immortals, but it's the one with the gods who pre-exist.
The Eternals.
The Eternals. Yeah, a movie named after its running time. And, you know, Wakanda Forever, again, aptly named because that's how it felt like, how long the movie felt like it was taking. So, I mean, if we are giving these things sort of a pass, you know, Becket gets one too.
And actually, Beckett's better.
Oh my God. That's like saying that, you know, a can of Spam is better than the contents of a latrine. Yes, it is. Except Beckett's no can of Spam, baby.
Becket is worth it and worth your time. It's a very, very, very good movie. Recommended by these two gentlemen, Patrick McCray and Gordon Dymowski. Excellent recommendation, gentlemen.
What brought it on? What were we talking about that inspired this? It was last week. What were we talking about?
We were talking. We did a Peter O'Toole movie called
My Favorite Year. Yeah. Okay, terrific. Jewel, thank you for watching it and letting us chat about it.
I enjoyed watching it. It was a very fun movie and it's very entertaining. I don't mind long movies at all. I had not seen an intermission in a long time, so I was shocked there was. I forgot because that's the thing. We live in an age where there's no intermission. It's like, holy shit, there's an intermission in this movie.
Yeah.
But damn sure worth it. Go check out Richard Burton, Peter O'Toole, great actors. Yes, they're movie stars too, and great actors.
Yeah, they are.
Solid 10. Patrick, you will be a con, right?
Yes. So, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Concord, North Carolina, with Katharine Hepburn and PJ Souls, and I'll find out if she's married.
Go check out Patrick at the con this coming.
Just look for a ring. I'm just curious.
Yeah. And go pick up the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound in the description box. Go check out Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page. And if you go to the con, get a book from Patrick. Buy a book.
There will be you can get a copy of the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound hardcover with an autographed 8x10 of a never before seen Catherine Lee Scott photo, autographed by Catherine Lee Scott for $40. That's an unbelievable deal. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Guys, go check out Patrick in North Carolina this coming weekend, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Coming up.
That's right. All right, guys, enjoy what's left of your weekend. I know it's Sunday, but good night, guys.
Good night, good sir.
Good night.
Take care.